to hear a person in their own words describe things, sometimes it can be a really powerful thing. And they're just folks like you, and, you know, what you're doing in your life is not so different than like the way that they were, you know, making their decisions and, you know, stuff like that. It's really helpful, I feel like.
Hi, I'm Vlad Bresnix. Welcome to the first episode of the BresnixCast. So in these podcasts, I'm going to chat to like established and upcoming musicians and producers and things like that. In terms of kind of genres and stuff, you know, I do have quite a broad taste, but there'll be a lot of experimental stuff, a lot of kind of noise music, that kind of thing. It really depends who I can get on the show, basically. So I'm pleased to say that my first guest is Adam Warren from the legendary experimental band Black Dice. We had a really interesting conversation, so let's get to it. Okay, so I'm here with Adam Warren from Black Dice. Adam, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Certainly. Thank you for having me.
Oh, that's cool, man. I've been a fan for quite a while, actually, so it's quite cool to be able to talk to you. How about we start, because I'm going to try and do these podcasts in a kind of without assuming knowledge in a kind of holistic way, if that doesn't sound too weird. So why don't you start by telling us like a bit about yourself, Adam, and how you got started with Black Dice?
Sure thing. So I grew up in California, and, Oregon, and I went to high school in Colorado, and, first couple of years of college in Colorado, and, I was really into DIY punk music and hardcore music in Colorado. It was like pretty much the only live music experiences I'd ever had, was going to really small shows with mostly local bands, but some touring bands. I guess, just kind of always felt like really strongly connected to this kind of music, this kind of small, really personal music. And that was really aggressive and underground and stuff like that. And, so basically I started my first band in Colorado. We're called Titari, and, we're sort of, connected with this band called the VSS, out of Colorado. I like dropped out of college and did this band Titari for like 3 to 5 years, something like that. 3 years kind of seriously, full time, no college. And we moved to Los Angeles, me and my bandmates from Colorado. And, I did some touring and, put out a couple records and tried to come to the U.S., actually tried to do like a European tour, but we didn't have any work from it. So, it didn't end up working out. So,
you let that stop you.
But, like that band was coming to an end. And I felt like I needed to sort of get my life together in a way. And so I decided to go back to school, and I had played a couple shows in New York, touring with Titari. And, I really like the East Coast a lot. I really like New York a lot. And so I was like, well, maybe I could get out to New York if I got into school over there. And so I applied to NYU Film School, and I got in. And, so I decided to come out, and, the Titari was ending, joint, and like I just kind of was like, thought I was retired from the world of, punk music, and that I was just gonna, start working after I got out of school or something like that. And, the last show I was playing with Titari, a friend of mine, Jimmy Hay, and also this fellow, Chris Hathwell, who's in this band called Festival of Dead Deer. They came to the show and they were like, hey, do you know these guys from Black Dice? They're really cool. Black Dice was already a band. And, I was like, no, I've heard of them, but no, I don't know them. And, so they gave me like their phone number, cause they had hung out with them. They're like, when you get to New York, you should look these guys up. And I was like, okay, cool. And, so I got to New York, and within like probably 3 weeks of me living there, I saw that Black Dice was playing a show at NYU, and I was like, oh, cool. This is like where I am anyway. It's really easy. I'll just come to the show. And, so I went down there, and I saw the band. I thought they were great. And then I was like, hey, what's up? I'm Jimmy and Chris's friend. And they're like, oh, cool, and let's be friends kind of thing. And so we just started hanging out. And then I actually ended up like needing a place to live really fast because I kind of got like kicked out of the place where I was staying at. And so I just moved in with Bjorn and Hisham. They're living in like a big like loft type place. And then like Sebastian was the bass player of Black Dice. He quit like within like, I don't want to say like a couple of weeks of me living there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, you could play guitar, like maybe play a show or two. And I was like, yeah, probably I could do that. I wasn't like really looking to get in a band or anything. But I was like, yeah, I could do that. And then like, I joined the band and I've been playing with them for like almost like, close to 20 years or something like that. So it's, it's just like, in a way, it feels like kind of like a predestined kind of thing, like I've always been connected to this sort of community and this sort of music. And, it's just really deeply ingrained with like who I am as a person. And so I feel like it was sort of inevitable that I would, come to find the people that I'm playing music with now.
That was a really good kind of bit of background, actually. So if we're talking about Black Dice then, I was going to phrase this question like, could you tell us about how Black Dice's sound has progressed over the years? But I feel like it kind of might be a better way phrased to say, like, tell us how you mellowed out over the years.
Sorry, what was that last little bit?
Sorry, I'll do it again. I think it might be better phrased like saying, tell us how you guys mellowed out over the years.
Oh, mellowed out. Yeah, so it's funny. I mean, I feel like we've just kind of sort of vacillated between like, becoming less abrasive and then swinging back to being more abrasive or something like that, and it's not been like one sort of consistent direction,
Yeah.
Like when I, joined the band, like before I was in the band, Black Dice was an extremely hard, tough thrash sounding punk band, and also physically very confrontational. Eric would be out in the audience and he'd be pushing people and Sebastian would like hit people with his bass, and it was violent, but in sort of a, sort of
acceptable in the scene.
Yeah, it was, and also just kind of like, sort of like at the place where like, sort of like hardcore music, and it was even called like post-hardcore, I guess, at that moment, like in the late 90s and stuff, especially from where I was coming from like the West Coast. It was so, kind of formalized, and like there was so little contact between like audience members, even, like something like a slam dancing or mosh pit or something is so uncool, so unacceptable. and a band could sort of rock out, and get sweaty and whatnot, but they're not going to like touch each other or like touch the audience. It was just a very sort of like, just pristine presentation. And, there was even getting into sort of stuff where like kids would be sitting down watching bands, or bands would be playing with their backs to the kids, and, stuff like that, where it's just like, it's getting really austere, the presentation, and really far away from kind of like a confrontational kind of rock and roll, or just a different kind of presentation of it. And like, so for me to, come to New York and to be like, dodging like a swinging mic, or, something like the bass, coming through, or like a boot, flying at your head or something like that. That was really fun and exciting. And like you're saying, it was completely acceptable because like as an audience member, if you're sort of agreeing to, that experience, and you're finding it, engaging and fun and stuff like that, then, yeah, absolutely. So, to me, that was fun. And, when I joined the band, it was still kind of like that for a while, and I had a blast, and it just felt really good to kind of shake off, some of just, what felt like, just like all these sort of somewhat formalized traditions of like, like West Coast, like hardcore music and stuff like that, and just, have a lot of fun and rock out and stuff like that. And we were doing that for like probably the first year or so that I was in the band, but like kind of like simultaneously, like I guess we were all like, I was still in college, but like those dudes graduated. I guess Eric was still in college too, cause he's a bit younger. But I think like, especially like the other dudes, like, like Hisham, he's like Japanese as well, as American. And so like, he had a pretty broad, like, musical background. Like he'd be into like the Boredoms and like noise music and stuff, as well as being into punk music. But like, like Eric and Bjorn were really not that into punk music when they were growing up. They're more into like indie rock and psych and, old American rock and roll and stuff. And especially like, by the time we had been in New York for a couple of years, like, we were just really into like collecting records and, just really broadening our tastes musically and, getting into like, experimental music and, like Lamont Young or something like that, or like, just like, American noise music or like Japanese noise music. And, so like, I think sort of in the spirit of being the most like confrontational, unabrasive thing that we could be, like at that moment was to sort of not play like rock and roll and to just like, like maybe like play a drone or like, like not play guitar and drums and just like have like a tape loop going or something like that. And these are things that were sort of like, in between the songs, and the songs would be like sometimes like 15 seconds long or something. And then, then there'd be like this interlude that was like 3 minutes long of like a sort of a soundscape or something like that. And I think we all just started to feel like that was more fun and more interesting, was playing that kind of music, that was in between the songs. Yeah. And, it was just over like the course of like a year or so. I don't know. We played like this kind of like series of like transitional shows where we were just trying all sorts of stupid stuff. And like some of the shows are really bad. Like, I mean, I remember I played like a bass guitar from the trash or something like there's like a lot of like just junk on the streets of New York that we would just be like, cool, let's put it in the band sort of thing. And like, like I think there was like one set we did that was like all guitars or something like that. It was really skronky and just like not cool, just not good. It's just like, but like that was the thing. We'd just be like, all right, we're going to play all guitars this set. And then, or like, different things like that. Like, I think there's one where like Bjorn like had like a turntable, I want to say like on a guitar strap or like maybe taped to his guitar. So he's playing the guitar with the turntable or, something like that. Really, really noisy, really skronky, still rocking out quite a bit, I guess. Anyways, we did that for like probably like a year or so. And, and so just the sound of the band was just kind of changing organically, and we were not really touring that material. We were just playing like East Coast shows and stuff. And then I think we started working with like Mike from Troubleman, and then we put out like Cold Hands record, which like had some of this stuff on it. It had like kind of like some rocking kind of songs on it, but then it had like a drone song on it, or like sort of like experimental interlude type stuff. I guess, before we did that, we did like this other record with him that was more like a hardcore sounding thing, but it had like some collage aspects to it. And that was, I don't know. Anyways, I'm just saying it took a minute, but like, there was this moment, like, like around like 2001 or something, when like Bjorn, he was away for the summer. He was doing like an art residency, and he came back and he just really wanted to play like mellow guitar. Mm-hmm. And that's when we started playing like Beaches and Canyons type stuff. Yeah. And it just happened like really quickly. And like, we just kind of got that record together really quickly, and it happened like super organically. And it was really sort of like a short period of time for the band that we like kind of had this sound or whatever. But, because it took like so long for the record to come out, and the record had its own life and stuff like that, it, felt like it was this kind of thing that we had to support for a while was, some of that material. And then, by the time like even like the record was out and stuff, we were like already on to like being more minimal than that even. And like you're saying, like more mellow, and that was certainly like a direction that we were going for a minute. Mm-hmm. And then like, then we parted ways with Hisham and then it was just me and Eric and Björn. And by that time we were sort of interested in like, how can we start rocking again and, kind of get the audience like psyched and stuff, because, like we had gotten to this point where like, like it was starting to feel like a little, cerebral, I guess, like, our presentations were starting to get rather austere, now a good, like, 6-7 years since like, like I was, first getting psyched about, playing like a raucous rock show, we're starting to play like museums and, just, having chirping birds and, stuff like that, and like, like, and people are starting to sit down and talk like in between songs and, stuff like that. And like, we were just like, oh, this is kind of like
low energy.
Well, not like, it's like, we did exactly like what we wanted to do. And stand by that material completely. And I'm like totally stoked to do it. But like, it was just like, it was an experiment and we did it. And then we were like, okay, let's try to change this up. And then, so, like I would say like the next like 3-4 records after that, we've been on like kind of like a trajectory to get back to like sort of like a rocking band, but like, sort of like bringing the experimental instrumentation or like the unusual vocabulary of sounds and trying to bring it back to like a rock and roll presentation sort of, and having like a live situation that's like really engaging and really fun and really loud and visceral and kind of fusing all the worlds, and that's, I feel like the direction that we've been on, for like probably like the last 4 records is getting sort of closer to that. But like, like every time like I think we're doing that, like a few years goes by and I listen to the record, I'm like, still not really a fun rock and roll record necessarily, Yeah. But that's something that we're sort of striving for.
Yeah, it's funny, actually. I was going to ask you a question about like your musical gear and how it's changed and stuff like that, and it was interesting how you were saying about like, like picking up instruments and that. But also, actually, I totally was understanding what you say, like now how like you were saying you go back and forward between like different sounds and stuff like that, because I often think that music's kind of like food in that way, where you don't always want a burger, do you know what I mean? But like it's that sort of way you kind of. Well, that's how I'm with music. I go through these like periods of like listening and doing like completely different things, like, just because I like all of it, and I, and I have different sort of, I think it sort of reflects your mood at the time. But here's a question actually that I'm quite interested in, because I think it's kind of in the same vein. So like, what is your musical process like? I mean, like, do you guys do like a lot of jamming and things like that, or do you like say work on sounds separately and then bring them together, or is it like kind of a mixture?
It's been really different at different eras of the band, I guess. I think like sort of probably from like the time that I joined, which is like in like spring of 1999 till about like 2000. So like, 10, 11 years, we would get together, between 3 and 5 times a week, to practice and to write songs and stuff like that. And, some of those sessions were pretty rigorous, and, we were like working on like getting a record together. And then, some of them, especially like later, like once we started touring a lot and, like really supporting a record, like we'd have like periods of time where we'd be like, we can't practice for a while, or, just like, or like when we did practice, we'd get together and just hang out more than we were like practicing or writing songs and just kind of vibing. And I feel like if there's anything that's been consistent to like our process, it's that it's like, I feel like just relating as people, even before like music, has been like a really important thing. And, you know, especially now that we're like a 3-piece and Eric and Bjorn are brothers, so they are obviously going to have like this whole history and connection that I don't necessarily have access to. And I don't know, it's just like, I think it's hard for us to just start at zero and just be like, okay, here's my awesome idea for a song. And then like, let's hear, how are you going to add to that? Or, you know, how are you going to do, you know, how are we going to do that? You know, like we don't work like that. Like we're not like a pro band as such, like in a way, you know, like we're more like a really vibey kind of group of dudes that like to like spend a lot of time hanging out and like, you know, relating deeply and like, you know, we listen to a lot of tunes like in the practice space and we just shoot the shit and talk about what's good and what's bad and what's happening in the world and what's happening with our lives. And it's just like, it's a full hang session. And then we'll be like, all right, let's jam. And then you're kind of all there, you know, like sort of like emotionally and like just in the same mindset. And I think like, if anything, that's been the consistent thing to our process. And then, you know, outside of that, you know, sometimes there'll be like one dude has like all the elements of the song, the rhythm, the melody, or like the structure, or, you know, sometimes someone will just have a riff, or sometimes someone will just have a beat, or someone will just have a loop or something like that. So it's real different from song to song, record to record, what the process has been. And, you know, now, in the last like 3 years or so, we haven't all lived in the same city. So everything's kind of out the window now as far as our process. You know, there was a period a few years back when Eric and I were living in New York still, but Bjorn had moved out to LA. And then, so it was just me and Eric working. And then, you know, sometimes we'd get together with Bjorn and we play like some shows or like try to do a record. And so, you know, things have slowed down considerably because we're still kind of based on this model where we're like all in the same place, and we're not anymore. Now me and Bjorn are in LA and Eric's in Spain. And, so, you know, me and Bjorn get together like, you know, like every week and we're still working on tunes and stuff, but things have slowed down a bit. But it's still kind of the same process. And, you know, like we'll have songs that we work up together, me and him, and then Eric will come out here and then we'll work on them in kind of the same way. But we're kind of being forced into like a more pro band model where we're kind of like, okay, here's the tune. Let's work this out like now. And then, you know, in a few days we'll play the show or we'll do the record or whatever. And so that's kind of a new thing for us. And, you know, I guess we're kind of like slowly, adapting to the reality that like, oh, we could just totally be sending files of the practices back and forth. And, you know, we working like a modern band, and we are approaching that. We haven't quite got there yet, but I think that's probably going to be the way forward, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting, like how you're talking about that kind of thing, how you would like, how you like built a relationship between you, you know, and like a bond. And like in my experience and stuff, I think that like that really, it helps musical chemistry and things like that. Do you know what I mean? Because if you have a bond with someone, it's something like, it's just like you're kind of almost, you get on their wavelength. And then if you're playing music with them, then a lot of the times I find that you're on the same wavelength. And that's it's a thing you don't get with everyone, if you know what I mean.
For sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that bands can work. And, you know, there's bands that are held together by, you know, a certain level of success or something like that. And like everyone's got too much to lose to not be in the band. And even if they don't like each other as people, they have to come together as band people. And, you know, and I think that can totally work and can yield good results as well. And, you know, it's just like, that's just not the way that we've ever operated. And, you know, aside from, you know, spending a lot of time, you know, together, like, I mean, like, we'll just like hang out, like, just as friends and stuff like that, and like do other stuff. Like, even when we've played like, you know, 100 shows in a year and, you know, spend like weeks or months together on tour and then, you know, in the studio and stuff like that. And, you know, like, we just spend a lot of time together. It's worked for us. You know, I don't think it's necessary to be an awesome band or anything like that, but it is sort of our process.
Yeah, that's cool. Something I'm also kind of interested in asking you is, so I know you guys, like, you do your own cover art, and you've even released a book of collage art as well. So how important do you think is the visual art element to Black Dice?
Yeah, I think it's super important. It's something that sort of contextualizes the music, and because it's something that, like, is done by members of the band. It's mostly at this point it's like Bjorn's vision, like his art is on the covers and stuff. There's a period of time when Hisham was in the band, he was also doing stuff. They both went to school for visual art. Eric and I, didn't study visual art per se. I went to like film school, so it's a little bit more, like of a time-based story medium, not necessarily visual. I mean, certainly, if you're into photography and stuff like that, it is. But, I think, like, especially like coming out of like hardcore and stuff like that, like there's like a real sort of, humbleness, I guess, to sort of like the way that like, hardcore record was presented, like a really like sort of like rough hewn, like kind of handmade quality. And I think that like, especially as we sort of moved away from the hardcore sound, like visually also, like, like the look of the records was becoming like sort of more sophisticated and more abstract and open, and like not looking necessarily like something that was abrasive, like something like, I don't know exactly how to say it, but something that could like sort of sneak into your home, sort of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That like, you would see the record and you'd be like, I can't tell by looking at this what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And to me, that's really important, to sort of like the idea of the band, as we moved away from like hardcore music and stuff like that. And when we did the book, kind of the idea was that we would do the book, we did it with a photography friend of ours, Jason Frank Rothenberg, who's an amazing photographer. And, he took the pictures that were the photographic aspect of the collage. And, the idea was that all three of us would contribute to the collages, sort of the way that we do with the music. We'd have our own parts, we'd have our own ideas. And I personally was kind of like, I mean, it's kind of weird. I don't really do this. Bjorn does the art. Like, I'm just a jammer. I work in film, like whatever. But like, like I had done flyers before for my other band and stuff. And then like, I was just like, I can do this. This is like something that like is part of the language of, DIY culture is, you just kind of are like, yeah, this is not something that you necessarily have to go to school for to like, be able to express an idea successfully. And so that was really liberating for me. And that was a cool process to go through. And, like for the records and stuff, I think, for the most part, it's still Bjorn. I think, sometimes Eric will have stuff. I mean, Eric has his own sort of, complete catalog of solo releases that he does all the music, records them, and does all the art. And, it's a really holistic package that, so he can obviously do all that stuff as well. And it's just been sort of a thing that like, visually, like, I guess like a lot of the record art has always been sort of Bjorn's thing. And then I guess, the other thing is like around like 2007 or so, we started doing like our own videos. Like I think like the first video we had was, this fellow, Ara Peterson, did it. He was in Force Field and he's a visual artist. He's amazing. And, that's a really cool video. That was like 2004, for a song off of, Creature Comforts, Treetops. And And then the next one we had our friend Danny Perez do it. He was doing like live video for us, and he would tour with us, and he's a filmmaker, and he's got a really good movie called Anti-Birth that's out right now. It came out last year actually, but you can check it out like on Netflix or whatever. But that was really good. And then sort of, meanwhile I was like working on like films and TV shows, and I'm learning to become an editor and stuff, and I was just like sort of like, I think I could probably do this. And so then like in like 2007, we had a record, and I was just like, I think I could like do like a version of a video that would feel like what we did with the Gore book. And like, let's just figure out a way that like all three of us can sort of be involved, and like, I'll just kind of run the computer or whatever. And so that's what we did. And that's how we did like the Kokomo video. And, we did another video. It's not widely seen, for a song off Repo, called Glazin'. But for some reason, like YouTube, like took it down, and, I don't know, we're really like just too lazy to put it back up. So like that one is like not, I mean, it's out there, sort of. I don't know. Maybe it's not out there. Anyways, I've made another one, with the band. And then we did one for, Repo. And then we actually did some like, sort of just like commercial, this is funny. We did like just some commercial design work for a few years there as well, just like in between like records and stuff. Like we did like a collaboration with a surfwear company out of Australia. They approached us to like design some clothes. And so we did like some like patterns and whatnot, and they made it onto some clothes. It's a phenomenal experience. It's really cool. And, we got some money off of that, and we did some videos for like other bands. We did one for Chick Chick Chick. We did one for, Wooden Ships, and, we did some stuff for Animal Collective as well. So it's like, I mean, there was a moment where it was like, concurrent with doing the records and stuff, we were also like a freelance design firm of like all these different mediums in a way. We were doing remixes and stuff like that. A lot of that sort of work has fallen by the wayside right now. We still get approached to do some remixes sometimes. Like Eric and Bjorn both do like design work for other bands and stuff. And, I do some, video work for other stuff. But yeah, like mostly we're just doing stuff for ourselves these days.
Oh, that's cool. I was actually interested in the whole thing about how I've noticed that like, say you work with like Bjorn and Eric does a lot of his solo albums, but you kind of answered my question before I asked it, which is awesome. Also, one thing I was thinking about as well that I really wanted to ask you about is, see your collaborations with Wolf Eyes. Could you tell us a bit about how they came about and what that was like?
Oh yeah, let's see. I gotta think about that. I remember Wolf Eyes, they played in Brooklyn, probably like 99, 2000, something like that. I was friends with a dude who was like, had grown up with those guys, and he was like, you should check these guys out. They're really good. And so I think we all went, and we were like, yeah, these guys are awesome. Aaron Dillaway was in the band at that time. And, it was, I want to say, I mean, it was a pretty rockin' presentation. I mean, there was guitar involved, and, they had the tape loop beats. It was heavy. It was good. It was really good. And, I don't think we met them at that time, but then the next tour that we did, I want to say Bjorn booked the tour. I don't know how he got, we got their contact, maybe from Chris Freeman or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but, anyways, we had their contact, and John put on the show, at his house, which was like a suburban family's house, like in suburban Detroit. Like, we rolled up in the van, and we were like, oh, this has got to be a mistake. Cause like, it wasn't like a punk house. Yeah. It wasn't like a place where like a bunch of kids lived. It was like him and his wife lived there, and it was a really respectable
It's a grown-up
neighborhood. Yeah, and there was no, flyers on the walls. There was nice furniture, art hanging on the walls, and we were like rolling out of this van, and we were just like, oh my God, where are we? Who are these people? and John, to us, I mean, I think he's like my age, but he just seemed like he was really old. Like he seemed like he was like, I can't remember. He had like a straight job at the time. Like I want to say he worked for like some kind of like phone company or something, like kind of like a techie type job. And, he's coming home from work and he just seemed like such a intense, straight-laced dude, like almost like had kind of like a military vibe to him, and we're just like, oh my God, I don't know, what are we into? And it just like didn't seem like it was going to be like a cool show at all or mellow or anything. And so it was in his basement, but like I said, it wasn't like a punk basement. It wasn't like any kind of scene that we were really familiar with. And the show was not big. I mean, I want to say there was like 10 people at it or something like that. It was like really small. And I think I want to say like Universal Indians might have played or something. Maybe Wolf Eyes played. I'm not sure I guess they must have. I don't know, maybe Wolf Eyes played and then some side projects played. There was definitely some local, noise acts and like experimental acts, but it was so much sort of like more rootsy than like anything we would experience before. I guess sort of like the noise music that we'd like been exposed to in New York was like, it was really, I don't know. It was just presented differently, like this had a very accessible kind of like, it had like a DIY feel to it, like the way that a DIY punk show does, but like not like this dark, like in your face, like, angsty, S&M laced kind of like, feel this pain kind of presentation. It was more like, kind of like a blues show in a way almost, but like in a house, like in a basement and like beer and like, it's just fun, and cool. And so, we were watching all the bands and we were like, this is a cool scene, but it was really small. Like, I mean, it was like, you would almost say it was like a bad show, or like kind of a disaster. Cause like, it wasn't like packed. And we were playing and I want to say like Bjorn, like John's wife at the time, I think she was having like a birthday party. And so like upstairs she had like all her friends, like these like, like nice ladies, like, and they're just like drinking wine upstairs and they're just like having like a nice adult time. And like downstairs in the basement, it's just like all scuzzy music and like a couple weirdos and stuff. And then we, this is at the moment that we were like, in a way, like right in between, like playing like experimental music, playing hardcore music, it's just really, really loud. And we're really into like having a lot of equipment. And so we had like just tons of amps and we're having to run like extension cords and whatnot so that we wouldn't blow the power and stuff. And like we played for like 8 minutes or something. And like John was like, dude, way too loud, way too intense. You guys have got to stop right now. And we were just like, dude, what the fuck? Like we came all the way here to like play this music. And so like the show was pretty small, like it was short. It wasn't crazy or anything like that, but I think, they were really into it. Like, like all the people in Detroit were really, thought it was a fun show. It just was not the kind of like right venue for it, I guess, or whatever. But,
yeah.
but we were really into their scene and it was so different and accessible and just fun. And then like, then we just were hanging out with the dudes for the whole night. And then we got some insight into their world and, they're just like, able to like just have so much fun and they're just like listening to like booty bass techno like all night and like hip hop and like and it was like the funnest night and the coolest dudes that we'd hung out with ever. And we just made like best friends like in one show and one night. And then the next morning we were just like peace. And I think they were like, yeah, let's do a record together. And And so I don't know, it was probably like 6 or 4 months later or something like that. I think we might have played some other shows like in New York or something, they came out and, so we were connected from that point on, and, we were in touch with those dudes, and I think we were just like, yeah, let's book some studio time. And, I don't know, I think some dude from like Other Music in New York, like recommended a studio in Chinatown that was like really inexpensive. I mean, they might have done it for free. I can't remember. It was like one of these situations where like they were trying to like acquire the experience to be a studio or something like that. It was either really cheap or free. And so we just did like a 2 or 3 day session with them, and we just jammed. And I think, it was around the time, I think, I can't remember if we had done Beaches and Canyons yet or if we were about to or what, but we were like getting into playing like really minimally and kind of soft and stuff like that. We just jammed. It was just fun, we just like would hang out and like, we just roll the tape, and like, we, I don't know, we had like a couple hours of stuff. And then I think like Aaron was like, well, we'll just mix it or whatever. And so, yeah, so I guess, the idea was that we were going to put it out on Fusetron, which we did. And we have like the one record that came out on Fusetron, but then like Aaron and John like did like 100 other versions of the record. It just kept on coming out, like, Black Water and Chimes or whatever, like that record, volume 20 or something, like
I've heard a few different ones.
so many different ones, like they just kept putting them out, which was amazing. And I think probably a lot of those are even better than, the record that came out on Fusetron. But yeah, it was just cool. So, like that's kind of like the start of our relationship with them. And then, we just, then we started doing tours together and stuff. And, they've just been a major band for us throughout, our whole life as a band, and, kind of like a good touchstone for us to like go back to, like through the years, like, like they'll come to LA and like, like me or Bjorn, or like, mostly Bjorn, like, cause like, he's out and about more than I am these days, he'll go to the show and he'll just be like, dude, so good for the head, so good for the soul, just like, to just kind of, check in with these like, people that you deeply respect, their music and their process, and just kind of remember where you come from, and it just helps you, because like sometimes you lose perspective and what's important and stuff.
Yeah, and those collaborations are great. Right, okay, so if we switch gears here a little bit, Aaron, we'll maybe do some kind of shorter, kind of more lighthearted sort of questions.
Yeah, sure thing.
Why not? Okay, so what's the weirdest place you've ever played?
So, I'm sorry, this is just not coming to the top of my mind really quickly. I mean, like one of the weirdest, one of the worst is we played this fest. It was like sort of like an electronic fest in France, and it was at this. Well, the whole fest wasn't electronic. It was like a pretty big pop music festival. It's called Printemps au Bourges, springtime in Bourges. And so it's like a citywide fest, arts fest. They have like big outdoor festivals. I think like Placebo was playing and stuff like that. Oh, okay. But like we were sort of like, we were working with Fat Cat Records at the time for Europe, and like, IDM was kind of a thing, and we were sort of like on the post-rock / IDM kind of angle, that's how they were kind of spinning our music over there, like around Beaches and Canyons era. And, so I think they like booked us on this thing. It was called an audio brunch. And it was like, we played at like, I want to say like 9 or 10 a.m. And it was in this like castle, like this like French castle from, who knows what, like the medieval times, right?
Yeah.
And in the room was small. I mean, it could hold probably like 30 or 40 people sitting at these tables. It was like being in a small restaurant, basically. And like, even though we were, playing like kind of like, abstract sounds, birds chirping and, like, rumbling and, it was like an audio collage and stuff. It was still really loud. Like, and we were still using like a lot of amps, you know, we had SVTs and, you know, Marshall stacks and all this stuff, and it was loud. And, so, you know, we brought in all the amps and we're doing the sound check, and like the people are flipping out, and they're just like, no way. It can never be this loud. There's no way. And we're like, we're not playing. We're not going to play if we cannot play the way we want to play, you know, this sort of thing. And like, so I don't even think this show may not have even been open to the general public. I want to say it might have only been like an invitation only show for like, you know, the cultural minister of France and, you know, like just like people that were in the arts, you know, in the government, and people at the festival, and writers, and, you know, stuff like this. And I don't even know if you could just buy a ticket to the show or not. I don't see how you could possibly even get into it. It was so small. There was like 30 people there. We did it. We played for like 40 minutes at like the most punishing volume, and like the ceiling was like falling down, like this ancient like castle was like just like turning into dust, and people were trying to eat like, you know, eggs and, you know, croissants, and everyone was really unhappy, and it was like probably one of the worst received shows that we've ever played, and probably one of the most ill-advised locations.
That's funny, man. So, like, if you could have anyone, living or dead, to direct a music video of yours, who would it be?
Oh man, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
They're not going to be easy, these questions.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the Devo like music videos. Like, I'm not sure, you know, I think they make them themselves, so I'm not sure like what like the actual dude is that I talked to about that. But like, you know, like I look at that stuff, I just look at the visual presentation of their band, and it's not something that like I aspire to, or like I feel like I want to, you know, make our show more theatrical or anything like that. But like, I mean, their overall complete aesthetic is at such a high level, and it's funny, and it's confrontational, and it's deep all at once, and, you know, it's really substantial. And I just think like of almost all the band, I mean, they're true heroes to me, and, you know, their records and all their movies and media and stuff, it's a very tight package. So yeah, something like that, like, I think for sure.
Oh yeah, cool. What non-musical influences do you have?
For years, when I get this question, I'd just say TV, and because it's true, like, you know, like I just would watch like a ton of TV, you know, and like really just kind of like trashy TV and like ads and stuff like that. And like, I think it is completely true that it was really influential. And like, you know, like I think like, you know, for a lot of years we sort of embraced like just like commercialism, sort of like in this really crass way, but like, you know, just sort of like taking like things that were slick and like sort of like twisting them and making them gross, and then like kind of presenting them in this like blown up way or something like that. Yeah. But really, honestly, like these days, like I can't watch too much TV, and, you know, like I feel like the world has changed so much, where
I'm
like,
the same, yeah.
like, you know, like massive, like just like the culture at large, there's just so much like problematic just stuff going on, and, you know, like I just it's actually just too intense for me. And so, you know, like you know, like you know, I'm into movies still, and I'm into like some documentary films and stuff like that, and, you know, I'm into like music history a lot. That's still really influential to me, you know, like pop music history, like, you know, rock bios and stuff like that. It's kind of a safe world for me to tread in, but I try to blow it up as big as I can, so that, like, you know, like I'm from like reading a history of a band or something like that, I try to think of like, you know, like what's happening like with the world at large. And, you know, then like when I'm at practice, we'll be talking about it, or if we're playing shows, we'll be talking about it. So it's like, it's almost like a language with which, you know, we can talk about the world, is like through sort of the culture of bands or something like that. So, yeah, you know, it's kind of lame sounding, but it is influential, you know, music bios, stuff like that.
I was going to ask what else you like doing apart from music, but if it's something other than film, let me know. Because
Yeah,
I know
no,
you
I mean,
expressed interest in that anyway.
yeah, no, me personally, like I work on like, TV shows and films and stuff like that. And, I have a family. I hang out with my kids and stuff. And Bjorn has got, he's got like a art practice. He's, got, visual art shows, several a year. And, he does like design work. And, Eric's got his solo career. Actually, a lot of people don't know this, but he's also does some visual art. He does it just for himself almost at this point.
Yeah.
It's not really displaying it so much. He did a really cool book. What the hell is that? I don't know what the name of this thing is. It's sort of like a text collage book. It came out last year. And then he's done a couple photo books. They're sort of like self-published at the moment. So I don't know if I think he's like maybe selling them at shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, in addition to that, he's also, he does like some paintings and stuff like that. He's got like this whole, he's just like such a creative dude, and he's for the most part doing it for himself. But like, I think at some point, he'll be like displaying this work. It's all like super high quality stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah.
What's your musical guilty pleasure? Like, you can just give me one or two. You don't need to give me all of them. I know I've got hundreds of them.
Let's see. Let me try to think.
I've got an entire playlist on Spotify full of it, but I never tell anyone.
That's weird. I don't know. Like Kanye West maybe or something like that. There's nothing so guilty about it except now he's such a buffoon that like I'm kind of ashamed to say that I spend time, I actually don't truly like some of the newer music as he's also become more crazy as a public persona. Also like I don't think his music is as good, but like the Yeezus record was like so good. Like it was really like kind of shockingly good, and I'd have arguments with like Eric about it, and he'd just be like, he's such a piece of crap, like how you can't like anything associated with that world. I'd just be like, dude, it's just good. And then like in the past few years, like I feel guiltier and guiltier about the way that the music just still kind of works for me. So I don't know, that's like one of them. That's pretty minor,
It's a thing where it's like, there is a point where I don't listen to a lot of Kanye West, but I know what you mean. There was a point when I was listening to some of the stuff like you said, the Yeezus album and stuff like that, and I thought, this guy just doesn't give a fuck. And it was kind of refreshing a bit, but then like he's kind of gone a bit mental.
Yeah, well, like like the life of Pablo, like there's just like just like there'll be like a lyrical turn that's just so bad, and like the idea is so bad, it's so gross, and it's beyond not giving a fuck, but just also just being like really lame, and and then even some of the music is not even cool. It's just kind of a mixed bag, that record. It's got some tunes on it that are good, but then some of it's bad. But like, so I don't know. I think he's a really interesting figure, I guess, and so I'm following him. I guess, something like, LCD Sound System, that's kind of a guilty pleasure for all of us in the band, because, we're like colleagues of these people, our fates have been intertwined with theirs, and, James, helped, get us going and stuff like that. And, like some of the music, we despise it, but then like some of it's pretty good. And then, but it's just like, in a way, like the way that we listen to music, especially like when we're on tour and like when it's just the band, or like, like when we're like in the practice space. If it gets a conversation going, then that's a successful tune for us. Mm-hmm. So it's like, in a way, like almost everything that we listen to is like a guilty pleasure on one level. And we're just trying to figure out like why stuff works, why it's good, why it sucks. And like, what it all means and stuff like that. So this is just like the way we kind of experience music, and is much like that. So like, we'll take a band like LCD, or, they're not, sort of like as topical a band these days, but like, like the Rapture or something like that, it's just a way of kind of checking in with like history or whatever, and sort of like, okay, why is this working? Why is this not working? Or did it works for this reason, or it works for these people, but not for me right now, or, all that sort of thing. And, meanwhile, like I said, like, we're friends with these folks. And so no matter what, we respect them on that level and, give it up for, just being like really, successful, musicians and stuff like that. But like, like there is things you just can't like on every level. And that's where I feel like the guilty listening kind of comes in. And I totally am into that. I think it's great.
Right, well, as we start to wrap up here, is there anything you want to plug, anything you've got upcoming you want to talk about? Now's the time to tell us.
I mean, definitely support, Eric, all his solo records. He's got like several a year. Just do a Google search, because he don't have a website or anything like that, and you just kind of have to kind of glean them off of the labels he's on. He still works with DFA. He is working with Lies Records. Lies, great label. And all those things are super good. He's just working his ass off, and I think they're great. And Buren's art, really good. And I don't know, Black Dice. We have
Flaccid
some stuff.
Mojo.
Yeah, Flaccid Mojo. Yeah. We're still doing stuff. I think we're going to play like some shows. The Dice are going to, this fall, we're going to play like this Empty Bottle show with Animal Collective in Chicago.
Oh, cool.
And I think we're going to play a show in LA around the same time. And we're talking about playing some shows in, Europe, but like, not like, like a handful, and I don't think we're coming anywhere near you at the moment.
Oh,
but
come on, man, why not? I've not seen you live.
I tell you what, like, I mean,
if you do England, I'll come down. I'll get a train down to England.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, as people bring us the shows, and we'll bring you the show, basically.
I would like to see you live, but I obviously know it's a nightmare, this kind of thing, especially like doing shows so far away and stuff like that.
Yeah, we played in. So you're in Scotland?
Scotland, yes.
Yeah, we played in Glasgow a couple times.
Did you? I'm in Glasgow actually. Oh, I've never seen you.
But I mean, it was like quite some time ago. I mean, the first time we played probably like 2003, and then the last time we played was probably like 2011.
See, in 2003, the edgiest music I was a bit younger, and the edgiest music I was listening to was like Sonic Youth, and I thought, man, this is really edgy. That was before I got really into it.
Yeah, they're a great band. But yeah, we played at like I want to say like, what's Stereo or Mono? One of those places.
There's Mono and Stereo. There's two different places.
Yeah, whichever the small place was. We played.
Oh, they're both small.
Yeah, it was cool. And then we went to see Optimo at the Sub Club. It was amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, that changed my life almost. Like, I still listen to those guys. In fact, I went to like a dance event like a few months ago with my wife as Optimo was playing. I think those guys are the boss. I mean, yeah.
That's quite cool, man. Yeah, you need to come back sometime. I would love to see you.
I would love to. I love it out there.
That is awesome. Well, listen, Aaron, thanks so much for coming on. It's been great to talk to you.
Likewise, thank you.
So I'd just like to thank Aaron again for coming on and taking the time. I really enjoyed the conversation. So I'll be back in 2 weeks on the 18th with another show where my guest will be the man behind Controlled Bleeding, Paul Lemos. And you're not going to want to miss it. We're going to talk about his new album, Carving Songs, and much, much more. So thank you for listening. The website is bresnix.com, BRESNIX.com. And to play us out, here is Black Dice with Last Laugh.